This episode is brought to you by Elevate OS, the only all-in-one community operating system. Elevate OS transforms property management, combining resident engagement, reservations, rent payments, maintenance, and concierge services into a single super app. It also uniquely integrates access control, intercoms, package lockers, and thermostats, eliminating app fatigue and redefining modern apartment living. Visit elevateos.com/MMN for a free demo and see how they can help you level up your operations. Welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Collective. Today, I am drinking out of my MMN mug some Free Reign Venom. Excellent coffee. We'll do a coffee review soon. But I wanted to invite you, as is tradition, to grab your own beverage and get ready for this week's installment of the Multifamily Collective. I had the opportunity, it was a great privilege, to catch up with Riaz Taplin. Riaz is the founder and CEO of Riaz Capital, an integrated workforce housing developer and institutional grade sponsor with a core team of over 30 professionals with over 800 million of real estate assets under management. Managing a portfolio of over 1,600 residences and well over 2,100 residents in the pipeline, Riaz Capital is one of the most active developers in the Bay Area. A lifelong resident of the Bay Area, Riaz is committed to improving the Oakland community, serving as a board member for various community and political groups, including Oakland Promise and the urban planning think tank Spur. Beyond his work locally, Riaz is also committed to helping those less fortunate in his ancestral country of India, and as an active board member of the American India Foundation. Riaz has been thinking about workforce housing for most of his professional life. Growing up in a real estate family, Riaz detoured early in his career from the family business to develop his own style and founding a design build firm and developing over 50 ultra luxury residences in the Bay Area. Riaz refocused his vision to workforce housing and over the following decade built a portfolio of over 1,600 residences across the East Bay. In the process, Riaz constantly reimagined how to apply market rate strategies and designs to workforce housing, ultimately becoming a leading expert in the creation of NOAA. That stands for naturally. This conversation was a mile a minute. Barely got a word in edgewise. And I'm not saying that in a discounting way to Riaz, but he is so incredibly passionate about what he does and the purpose and the mission behind his organization that he can just speak about it with such intensity and ongoing dialogue, almost monologue. But I learned a ton. I took at least 4 pages of notes. Some of the primary takeaways were his upbringing, how that influenced his entrepreneurial spirit, how he successfully transitioned from luxury flipping to workforce housing, this whole thing that he's created within his organization, the micro living studio. That was very fascinating to me. So there are a ton of takeaways. Grab your favorite writing utensil and your favorite way to record information, whether that be through laptop or through a Remarkable or on a good old fashioned piece of paper or a journal, because you can get a lot out of this one. So enjoy this incredible conversation with Riaz Taplin. Riaz, welcome to the show.
Mike, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, you live in the great state of California in the Bay Area. I lived in Foster City for the better part of 2 years, I think, plus minus. I just love the area. I imagine you do as well.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm very interested for our listeners and our watchers, or viewers rather, always interested in hearing the backstory of, call it your entrepreneurial journey. So maybe we start out by just talking about some of your earlier influences or maybe your career path, if you could unpack that for us just to set context for the conversation today.
That'd be great. So first of all, my name is Riaz, born here in the Bay Area. So I'm a local. So I love this place. So I grew up in San Francisco. My mom was from India and was in kind of a nonprofit person. And my stepdad ran an environmental organization called the Sierra Club. So they were the kind of the do-gooders in the house, right? Hug the trees, empower women, things that we in this part of the country still think are a good thing, right? And then my dad's like kind of a welfare kid who got to Stanford on a track scholarship. So he was the guy with grit, right? And Yeah, if you want something done, you want it done right, you do it yourself, right? It's like, oh yeah. It's like no prioritization of time, whether you're copying keys or negotiating a loan, you do it yourself. And that was my dad. And I would say the other big influence was my godfather, who was a guy named Oz Erickson, who went on to be the largest residential developer, I believe, in San Francisco history. And if not, he was only surpassed very recently. So I think about my household growing up as the do well, do good house, right? And my parents separated. So we lived in one house where my mom and dad decided that, we're getting divorced, but we're not breaking up the family, right? So my mom and my dad and my stepmom lived downstairs, and my mom and stepmom lived upstairs, and me and my sister lived in the middle. So we're literally sandwiched between, the grit real estate guy on the ground floor and the do-gooders on the top floor. And it's like, which of these two paradigms am I going to follow? And so I very much grew up in a real estate family, and I very much realized I wanted to do something at the intersection of something that's socially positive and profitable, right? So I then, after growing up in San Francisco, went to school at the London School of Economics. So I'm still a great believer in the neoliberal consensus. Markets solve problems. Just let them work. We'll be okay. And so I came back from the London School of Economics with the idea of, wanting to do something cool in the housing ecosystem that was socially positive and was market oriented. And I read this article on the flight back in economy, right? Because I was a student, right? In Dwell magazine about this guy named William Macy, right? From Idaho, who had designed this really cool house. I'm like, God, I'm going to go build 1,000 of these, $100 a square foot. We're going to rent them for $3,000 a pop, and I'm going to be loaded. Needless to say, that guy never returned my phone calls. And so I needed to figure out something else to do, right? And so the first chapter of my career, I basically started when I was 22 years old, being and it was really a cleanup of these kind of non-productive assets my parent had, which turned into a luxury flipping business. So from 22, I was like, I don't know blank, to by 25, 26, I was doing $20 million a year in sales, running 6 projects at a time, 100 people in the field. And all I had to organize myself was my same organization system now. It's called a composition book. And you write down what you're going to do today. Whatever you don't write down, you cross it off and you put it on tomorrow's list. And and then my accounting system was a little Excel, which I entered everything, including copy keys, $1.63, 2525 Webster. And, up until I was 28 years old, I was doing 20 million in revenue. I had my Excel files. I had my composition book. I had a truck and a 3 Series, and that was it. Oh yeah. And the most important tool, the phone.
Oh yeah.
And so that was still 28, and very successful. The first project I did, I think we bought for $1 million, invested $2 million, sold for $7 million. I'm like, this is gonna be easy. I just gotta do one of these every year. So I'm gonna be loaded. 2008 rolls around, it's like, right? And I was lucky enough to sell my last house on August 30th of 2008. And I believe, looking at your bio, that you're also old enough to remember that general time frame. Yeah. And Lehman collapses 15 days later. And this lovely couple bought the house, and they said to me, look, Riaz, we like the house and we love you, and we're going to overpay, and we don't care, and we don't want you to feel bad. So we're going to give you a little $5,000 extra. And those people saved my life, right? And saved my career. So I went into the GFC armed and loaded. And so then and for those of you who are listening, don't remember the GFC, it's the global financial crisis, 2008. And boom. And basically, I really wanted to just go get a job, right? I was like tired of dealing with my dad, tired of running around with a dump truck and a BMW in my composition book. I just want to, do something more intellectual.
Yeah.
And it turns out, if you're a real estate flipper in a global financial crisis where the epicenter was real estate, you're relatively unemployable. Yeah. I was like, you're going for interviews like, I can make shit happen. They're like, I don't need any of your stuff. Get out of here. Right. So I basically went to
lay people off. That's what we need. You needed that. How do you lay people off gracefully skill? You didn't have that.
Exactly. So then basically, so I'd done my flipper years. I knew how to build stuff. I knew how to finance stuff. I knew how to, run construction teams, put together construction budgets, construction schedules, etc. And, And I picked up another skill during that period of time, which was urgency, right? Like anything, when you're a one person shop, right? And someone taught me anything takes 1 minute, you do now. So I just became hyper efficient about just nailing through all my stuff. In the morning, you get up, you do all the little stuff first, you delegate everything second, and whatever big project you leave to the second half of the day, so that everything that influences the ecosystem is happening first.
When you're sharpest, right? Your mind's rested, exactly. Your body's rested, and you get it. Yep.
Then basically I was like, okay, don't have any money, but all these buildings are very cheap. So I did basically a bunch of lease option deals between 2010 and 2012. And for those who don't know a lease option deal, very simple. Somebody's got a building, but you don't have any money, right? And they don't want their building, but you still don't have any money to buy it, right? Yep. So I did these 7-year deals where, I got $500, give me a building. And I basically bought 7 buildings with $500 to $1,000 down each, big money, right? And, within a very short period of time, what was basically a $5,000 investment was probably worth $25 million, right? Yeah. And that was just the home run of my life, right? Or my career. And so that was basically 2008, 2013. I was lucky enough somewhere in there, my best friend from college who had the very institutional resume, Carlyle, Morgan Stanley, H2 Capital, as opposed to mine, like I can make stuff happen, kind of teamed up to go grow the platform. So I'd grown it from about 80 units to 400 units with my lease option deals. He and I grew it with a series of small syndications and a fund up to 800 units. And then great guy, just most ethical person. When we did our operating agreement, Mike, and I still believe you only do business with someone where you can do business on a handshake, right? Yeah. And when we did our operating agreement, Travis and I, he said, Riaz, are you ever going to read it? I was like, no, we have a deal. We shook on it. You put whatever you want in that operating agreement. I'm never going to read it. I'm never going to look at it. I'm just going to sign whatever you put in front of me, right? And we then, we'd grown the business, doubled the size of the business. And, he wanted to move back to be close to family in New York. And I still wanted to grow my business, right? And we separated, right? And we're still best friends to this day, right? And so that was a cool experience, getting to work with someone like that. And then my business really took off when these 3 awesome guys came to join me, which was, this guy, Paul DiCarlo, came out of KPMG, joined me about 13 years ago. And then Max, Paul, Seth, and Brian joined in 2014. And we've been together now a decade. And we really pivoted the firm from being kind of just a regular value add player into being very focused on one idea, which was, look, the demographics in America are substantially different from when you and I are young. People get married a lot older, that's right? And basically people are single with one income for a much longer period of their working life than they were in prior generations. How do we solve this demographic problem from a housing point of view? And so basically we became very focused on workforce housing, affordable housing, specifically for single income professionals. And we've now raised, close to $350 million, right, to build workforce housing in urban areas. But I don't know, when you were a kid, Mike, if you're like, workforce, my dream is not to go live in workforce housing or affordable housing. On what planet is that exciting, right? So then basically I was like, okay, we want to create like a high quality, design oriented, cool experience that's affordable to anybody who makes median income. And for those who don't understand what median income is, it's a fancy way of saying average, right? Yeah, and we really actually wanted for people to make 60% of average, right? So we basically started with, this is our budget of our customer. This is what they value, right? How do we build something that's high quality for that resident, right? And we've now built over 1,000 units of entry-level housing here in the Bay Area. And we've now, let me pause there because I don't want this to turn into a monologue, which I've now done, which I apologize for, Mr. Brewer.
Don't you worry whatsoever. I think that all that is awesome. And I'm interested in just keying off the last thing that you said. Where did you draw inspiration? Obviously, what you were talking about at that particular moment in time was very innovative. And I'm always interested and curious about how people, I mean, you talked about creating the persona, you talked about the information that underpinned the persona, but where did you draw the sort of creative inspiration to make that particular thing, that vision come true? What was influencing you on the artistic side, let's say?
That's great. So one that I didn't mention is as part of recovering from the global financial crisis, in order to pay bills, right, I started a design build service company, which we grew to about $25 million in revenue. And at the peak, we had about 30 people, great team, 10 people in the design studio, maybe 10 people in construction management, and we had a home ops division.
Understood.
And so despite the fact that I have a degree in economics, right, I had become this like high-end luxury designer in San Francisco, right, with an amazing client list. Our business model was, hey, if you want to build a home and you don't want it to consume your life, I can build you anything in 12 checks, 9 months, or whatever, 24 months and 12 checks, right? It doesn't need to be that complicated. So we kind of became a developer for luxury residential, right? Part of that was, despite the fact that I don't have a degree in architecture or interior design, I have a very good understanding of spatial ratios, right? And at the end of the day, everything is math, right? If you have a 10,000 square foot house, you probably don't have one bedroom, right? If you have a 1,000 square foot house, you probably don't have 10 bedrooms, right? So how do all these ratios work? Both, right? How do spatial ratios work? And this is a skill that, I was very lucky to meet a guy by the name of Tadai Ando in 2001. He was an amazing architect from Japan, Pritzker Prize winning architect. And he's the king of the ratio. That's his number one skill. And we realized like, hey, it's just like a math problem, right? You have ratios of widths and lengths and heights, and then permutations into those walls, which are fundamentally what is good design, right? So when we came to this problem of how do we build something affordable, which is accessible within a budget without public subsidies, I said, okay, it's a same kind of a problem.
Sure.
Right. And so we basically came up with the idea of designing units, which we would then furnish. Right. So someone's not like, how do I get my massive couch into this little apartment? Right. It just comes furnished. And I literally sketched it on the back of a napkin during a pitch meeting in New York where I didn't have anything to pitch. I was like, I don't know, let's just do this.
Kind of looks like.
And then, we raised 90 days later, we raised $35 million and we were off to the races. Right. And, and Brian, who still work together, we're sitting in that meeting and I pulled out a napkin and I drew this little thing. And we've now, of that particular product, we built 500 of them. That's
very Herb Kelleher.
It was basically, sorry?
I was just saying the guy who ran Southwest Airlines for a very long time, Herb Kelleher, I think his last name, he sketched a lot of things on the back of the napkin. So I was just remarking on the fact that you sketch things on the back of a napkin.
Yeah. So so in terms of influences, there was a design influence who was very much, I wanted to be design oriented, which is part of high quality. Number two, right, there are these great people in the 20th century that set out to solve a problem. And I think what the baby boomer generation, which is getting a lot of muck right now, was all about was this idea of equality, right? Which is like, okay, men and women should be equal. People of different ethnicities should be equal. Well, people should have access to reasonable forms of housing regardless of income, right? So, right, I would say that was kind of an idea, right? And then I would say the third one was very much, my godfather and my mom, where it's like, okay, how do you put your mind to doing something where you can be focused and create a financial outcome and be focused and create a social outcome, right? And at the same time, we have this problem in California, which I don't know if you know, we have a few problems here in California.
I've heard, right? Heard about a few.
Is with those problems, right, comes the idea that we try to solve every problem in every element of every decision, right? So you want to build housing, but it's got to be this. It's got to be that. So we let perfect be the enemy of the good, right? And so it's like, okay, we're going to throw that away and we're going to follow the same logic that you have when you build a software. How do you get to a minimum viable product? And then you build from there. So instead of going from I must have this, I must have that, where I'm just kind of paraphrasing clients from my design years, to, okay, what do you actually need and how do we build that for the most affordable price? And how do we turn that into a scalable business? That was really our strategy up until 2020, right? And then COVID, work from home, emigration from California, all these mega trends basically just hit us like a freight train, hitting something very small.
Yeah.
I have an analogy in my mind, but I don't want to say it, right? But freight train just hitting you, and you're like, okay, well, the freight train's either going to knock us over or we need a pivot, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so what we've pivoted to today, Mike, is an entry-level housing platform. We do student housing predominantly in Berkeley. We do affordable housing, right, where you don't have to pay property taxes, very tax advantaged, right? We do also your classic apartments, right? And we are an entry-level housing umbrella. As part of this, we've also created what I call horizontal businesses, which affect the platform as a whole. So we have a solar company to take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act. We have an ADU company to take advantage of the ADU laws in California. We've created a little insurance company to reduce risk. We've created a extended stay company to boost occupancy. These were all reactive to the environment, but the key thing was taking a big pivot away from a specific product in a specific market to having multiple products in multiple markets. And so today the business is hovering around $1 billion of assets under management, including debt. So total assets under management. We're coming up to 4,000 units in operation between what we're operating and building. And most importantly, we built a great team of professionals across a vertically integrated set of responsibilities that allows us to own the life cycle of a building.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's use that as a segue to talk about a couple of the projects. Two of them that I researched was the Z Hotel or Arthouse Jack London, which I think Jack London is a part of Oakland. Is that right?
That's correct.
Like an area of Oakland, California. So maybe unpack those two projects as it relates to what you just described in creating that ecosystem or that organization to govern it.
That's cool. Let me do this. Let me compare 3 projects for you.
Okay.
Arthouse Jack London. I'll take a new construction building that we're building right now in Berkeley, California, and I'll take a project that we're doing.
Perfect.
Let's just do those 2. That'll be easy. Cool. So in the case of the Berkeley project, we went and bought a piece of land next to a Whole Foods, great location, right? We understood, Berkeley is a little scary when you're getting a permit, because if California is, the People's Republic of California, Berkeley is basically, the North Korea version of the People's Republic, right?
Right.
And so we're like, okay. And because of the fact that we're specialists in what's called the California State Density Bonus Laws, we went into Berkeley confident that we could get a permit. And my teammate, Lisa Billhauer, amazing. She was actually able to get us entitlements in 6 months on this project. Okay.
Whoa.
Incredible. Game changing. And then we designed a building that, because it's Berkeley, you have the University of California, Berkeley there, the largest producer of PhDs in the world, right? And we're like, okay, let's build a project that's both caters to the workforce needs of the Berkeley community and the student needs of the Berkeley community. And despite the fact that this has been a difficult period for the Bay Area, a difficult period for real estate, and a very difficult period for ground up development, I think we're going to get to give or take a 7 cap on that project. We were able to, our indexing, which, our development team did a great job of managing what is construction costs going to grow at. We brought the construction costs in below budget. We brought the entitlements in faster than expected, and we got it financed with our new lending partner, Citizens Bank, having lost First Republic Bank, which had been our lending partner for over 20 years.
Sure.
Basically, but one benefit when you're building new construction buildings, there's nothing there. So it's very clear what you're building. It's everything, right? And you're designing to a spec, which you can then contract off of, right? The Z Hotel, which is what its name was before, and it was originally the blah 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 lodge, auto lodge, or whatever it was called, right? Was I'm a big fan of mid-century architecture, and This was like a 1950s building, not exactly, designed by the most famous mid-century architect. Right. But I was like, okay, we can make this thing cool. Like, I've been to Miami, I've been to Palm Springs. So I really took influence from the Sagaria Hotel. So it was much more of a creative project. And Lisa, who runs design and entitlement, we picked this Artemis Fernanda to do a beautiful job on the outside. And then Lisa and I picked the colors of the inside to make it look like a color study so that you feel like a sense of place. And what I think we're very good at here at Riaz Capital and Art House is creating a sense of place in all of our projects. That's the positive part of that project. The negative part of that project is the fact that we bought a hotel. So I have 130 rooms where we had plumbing, heating, and everything on a Monday. And on a Tuesday, when I want to make it into an apartment building, the great state of California tells me you have an unoccupiable building, right? And we knew that when we bought it.
Sure.
But basically, you got 1/2-inch pipe. We want 3/4. You've got this. We want that. So that project, very unfortunately, right, basically, you're going to rebuild and you don't know exactly what you've got when you go to do it, right? Now, it's turned out great, right? And in one project, we work with a third-party contractor. In the case of the Jack London project, because we don't want to get hit with random change orders, we use our internal contractor, right? In the case, so basically for each type of project, we design a team that's appropriate for that project, right? And Jack London turned out awesome. It probably won't be quite as financially successful as the project in Berkeley, but it's a very different execution style. And I think what's cool about Riaz Capital is that because a bunch of us grew up in construction, a bunch of us grew up in finance, and a bunch of us grew up in design, we really have all the pieces of a puzzle of how you bring together a project here at the table when we're making decisions, right? So you're like, oh, that's not going to work from a construction point of view. Oh, we'll never be able to finance that, right? No one's going to like that, right? And so how do you balance out quality, time, and cost, right? And when you're building any product, whether it's a phone or an apartment, you got to bring those three things to balance such that it works for your customer. And I think that's what we're very good at here at Riaz Capital.
So backing up for just a second, when you were sitting down and you were thinking through whether from a design perspective or a construction perspective or finance perspective, you were thinking about a specific persona that you were going to serve in the marketplace. And I'm just curious, like when you're sitting down and walking through that particular exercise, what are those conversations like at the table when you're defining that persona that you're going to serve?
I think the clearest one by far, right, that I always think about, right, is, there's people in our society that serve our society that don't always get paid what they're owed. And we always have a shortage of them, right?
Sure.
And rather than just pay them more, which would probably fix the problem, right? We're like, why doesn't anyone want to do this? Right. Yeah. And it's like, and I said the number one of those is teachers. Like, oh, we got all these problems with education. I'm like, well, when you have a problem in a company, what do? You just hire a more expensive person, right? When you have a teacher, right, it's like, oh God, I don't know why we can't attract any good teachers, right? So this problem is very extreme in a place like California, and it's most extreme in a place like the Bay Area where we have such an expensive cost of housing.
Sure.
And the salaries don't adjust, right? And meanwhile, the lovely people in Sacramento want to hire more bureaucrats, thinking that'll solve a problem.
Yeah.
And so the idea was like, okay, how do we make living in the communities where these awesome teachers serve livable to those teachers, right? And so I'd say, and I think one of the things I'm proudest of here at Riaz Capital is as a team, we really made it a priority to market our units in the market, but we've also made it a priority to market our units to groups that may not have had access. So for example, we've housed 120 Oakland teachers, and we currently house 60 of them through our partnership with TRIO. We've been the largest houser for the International Rescue Committee with the refugee crisis that happened with all these people that used to work for the US government in Afghanistan, where they were getting shot at by the Taliban. We're like, okay, we're going to help these people get resettled in America. Urban Academy, soccer teams. But in other words, like, hey, these people, especially teachers, are critical to the functioning of society. How can we pair our supply with that need? Now, really, that was the number one use case we were designing for. And I think the other use case that I was designing for was like, okay, in your 20s, when you're out of college, like you have groupthink, right? It's
sure.
Like, what are all 10 of us going to do this weekend? Right.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're like, okay, this group thing is a little bit much, but you want to be around your buddies, right? And your friends, right?
That's right.
And so, how do you design a product where you have enough personal space? Because there's nothing exciting about sharing a bathroom with anybody. And there's only a select number of people you want to share your bed with. So, how do you give everybody enough personal space and at the same time give everyone access to community, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say those are the two principles. How do teachers get access to housing? And how do you create a fun dynamic?
Yeah. So let's talk about that for just a second, because I'm very interested in the word community as of late, especially as AI and general artificial intelligence makes its way into the space and operating systems and things of that nature, where people might potentially be displaced in what they do for a living. So community is going to become more and more important, right? And so I'm wondering, when you're thinking about whether it be Arthouse or the hotel or whatever other project, how are you thinking about creating what I refer to as collision points, like intentional? I'll give you an example. We rehabbed a high rise in downtown St. Louis. We were working with an architect that said, hey, instead of putting bike storage on the patio, let's build a bike room. So we're intentional about bringing Sally and John together, and Sally and John may meet, and now they have a common interest, and they become friends, and they become sticky in our community. So I'm wondering how you think about the word community and how you go about programming community into your communities.
Great question, Mike. Look, I think at the end of the day, people like to hang out with people they like.
That's right. That's right.
And, and it's amazing how one blank can ruin a building for 200 people. Just take one person, right?
So true. So true.
And so I think the way, and depending on the scale of the project, you have more opportunity to create space dedicated to community interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the building that we've done the best job of this is actually not a residential building, but it's our take on small format industrial. So we have this building called Arthouse Studios, right? Or Arthouse Works now. It's a 110,000 square foot building that we converted from an old cannery, right? Mm-hmm. Really cool project. And, Brian, who's kind of helped me do everything, was like, okay, we need to create enough. The whole idea is your spaces are smaller because anything that you need that's not your industrial workspace, we're going to put in the common area. So we have, we have 6 conference rooms equipped with Zoom equipment and conference equipment and teleconferencing equipment for a bunch of light industrial users, because they would not think to put that in their own space, but it also forces all their meetings into the common area. We have several thousand square feet committed to community rooms, right? So that people come and have their lunch and everything in the common area. We do pop-ups in that space, right? And I think there, despite the fact that, we've been able to keep the building, which is kind of a mix between industrial, small farm and industrial, and a flex building, basically 90% full through this entire commercial disaster, right?
Yeah.
When you translate that onto a residential building, I think it's what you said, actually, Mike, is all the community interaction points need to be occurring in one place and not in random corners of the building, so that you pass through the place of community when you enter the building. And I think here, the building that Lisa and I did together at 3030 Telegraph in Berkeley next to the Whole Foods, I think we've done the best job at it, because you come in, you got the gym on this side, you got a cafe on that side, you got a courtyard, got a big lounge. And I was like, and, I remember, don't want to come across as a douche, right? Yeah, but I'm a member of a couple of members clubs. And I was like, how cool would it be if you lived in an apartment building above the members club, where you walk into the club and you're like, hey, is anybody here I want to have a drink with? No, go into my apartment. Oh, whoa, there's Mike sitting on the couch. I'm going to go bother him, right? And so I think the idea is, and that's why at Arthouse, which is our so Riaz Capital is our investment company, and Arthouse is the platform, right? So at Arthouse, we created a membership program because we really want people to think about it like a club, right? And in the go forward buildings that Lisa and I have designed, basically looking at the way in which people enter the building such that they interact with community. Now, it also then creates things you have to manage. People can't be too loud in that space. People can't do this. I mean, so it also turns you into some combination of the principal and the mom, right? So you have to be a little careful how much you do, right? But I think that's been very successful, right? Because it creates a sense of warmth. When I come to Art House Studios for work every day, I love that there are people in the lounge hanging out, having coffee, talking to each other. And I leave every night at 7 o'clock. I get here at 9, I leave at 7 every day. And at the same time, there's people in the dance studio, people in the climbing gym, people in the gym, doing their extracurricular activities in the building, right? And that's what it means to activate something, which is that people are wanting to be there.
It brings to mind, I think potentially people underestimate the value of what you're creating there. And it brings to mind this, I read this many years ago in a book I won't be able to cite, but Walmart or big retail institutions during the holiday season, this is going to age or date me rather, but they would hire people to come and dig through the DVD bin, right? To create this sort of fear of missing out. And the people were hired, they weren't buying DVDs, they were just digging through the bin so that other people would come over and pick up the DVDs and go and buy them, right? Because they think they're missing out on something. But they programmed energy around that, right? If you translate that to multifamily or creating a community space, it's like that energy in and of itself creates a marketing dynamic that you can't put a number to, right? We talked about math earlier, you can't put a number to that. You walk in that building, you think, whoa, I want to be a part of this, right? I want to lease here because I want to be a part of this energy every day.
Mike, you hit a nail on the head, right? And look, the key thing with marketing space, right, is when someone walks in the door, right, are they encountering an environment that they can imagine themselves in? That's and whether right. I was selling $10 million homes or leasing apartments for office space for $800 a pop, or apartments for $2,000 or $1,500 a pop, or anything else I've done in my career, it's can someone imagine themselves in that space, and do they feel good about the idea of them being in that space, right?
That's right.
And it's a lot, I mean, not to date both of us, right? But you and I kind of grew up after the era of online dating, right?
That's
and basically the way I think about it is, will people swipe right when they see my ad? Will people metaphorically swipe right when they drive by the building? Will they swipe right when they walk in the lobby? And it's kind of like dating, right? You have your first impression, you have your second impression, you have your third impression. And to use that Head and Shoulders ad, right? You never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? And so it's so critical that your online presence is good, because that's what somebody thinks they're going to be living in. So important that the lobby is clean, the smell. I'm so proud of our property management team. Oh God, the lights just went off. Hold on.
Because you still agree. You got to wave your hand. There you go.
Here in California, we're very green. The way we were green is the lights just go off randomly.
Yeah. You just got to wave your hand and the lights come back.
Wave your hand. So anyways, yeah, but it's the smell, the feel, and it's like, it's at the end of the day, are you expressing that you care about your customer or not? Do you care about your customer? And the one thing your customer will never get back is time. That's right. So do you care about your customer's time, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So I want to shift gears and maybe sort of draw us toward a conclusion here. Obviously, the current market is a little bit challenging as it relates to many things: operations, cost management, driving revenue, things of that nature. All of the things, right? How are you, as an organization, thinking about, say, the next 4 to 6 years and how you're setting up your platform today to take advantage of those? I heard you say earlier, look, we're quick to pivot. If we see something in the environment, we may potentially create a business around that to sort of complement the bigger business. But how are you thinking about that on a go forward?
I think the first thing, and I was reading Brad Jacobs' book the other day, the guy who created United Waste, United Rentals. And he said to me, it's very important to get the mega trend right. And fundamentally, the problem that we've had the last couple of years is that the mega trend was moving against us.
True.
Right?
True.
And I think at the end of the day, and one of my other great mentors is amazing guy, Arjun Devecha, who is, at one point the chairman of Grantham Mayo Van Otterloo. And he said to me, look, it's much better to be lucky early than late. And fortunately, in my early part of my career, I was very lucky. Then we had a period where we were not so lucky, and the mega trends went against us, right? But I really think number one is the mega trends are moving back in California's favor and are moving back in the Bay Area's favor. So if you look at the big three, number one is the immigration from California net has stopped. California is growing again. Number two, we're into the we're in a new tech cycle. And fundamentally, the Bay Area real estate is a lagger to the tech cycle, right?
Sure.
And so this AI boom and the capital being invested is insane.
Insane.
And the third one is work from home, right? You know, if you don't need to be in the hotbed of innovation, right? You know, and you can earn Bay Area salaries, why wouldn't you live in a lower cost of living, right? And if you take 2 and 3 and put them together, right? Or 1, 2, and 3, they're really fundamentally the same thing, right? Is the desire to be a part of, right, this tech cycle, the innovation cycle being back in full gear, and that's where the action's at, is very critical to our business. So number one, I don't think we'll be contending the same level of mega trend assault that we've been dealing with, number one.
Understood.
Number two is, look, you know, we need, at the end of the day, it's our job to create value for our customers and to create value for our investors. That's what my job. I am a fiduciary to do that. So in order to do that, we need to have the platform to being less vulnerable to a shock. That was my big takeaway from this and from this last 5 years, right? And I always thought about that by having, you know, we have 60 assets, right? The problem is they were too concentrated. So what we're in the process of doing, and we have a great acquisitions team, is spreading it out so that we're making a bigger bet. So we're growing our suburban business, and we have a great strategy to do that. We're growing in the southern part of the state. We have a great strategy to do that, right? So diversification is number two.
Sure.
And then number three is, look, the federal government is fantastic about giving away free money every now and then, right?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
When the federal government is going to give away free money, go get it, right? And so basically, whether it was opportunity zones or the Inflation Reduction or solar credits, historic tax credits, housing credits, subsidized financing. One of the big things that we've done over the last 4 years, which have been difficult, is like, okay, what are sources of subsidized capital, right? And then where can we then make bets with subsidized capital, which are long-term bets, such that when the market comes back, the cycle returns, we were able to make very good bets. And at the end of the day, it's markets like this, it's where you make money, right? Now, you hold the money by not over leveraging yourself coming out of this, right? Such that when you get the down cycle, you don't get hit by a downdraft. And I'm very proud of our platform, Mike, because if you look at my peers in San Francisco, Ballast, Veritas, et cetera, they've all imploded, right? We haven't lost one asset, right?
Yeah.
And what that comes down to is the way that my team, and really my partner, Paul, was managing the overall leverage scenario, right? But coming out of this, what I'm really excited about is like, look, it's a great time to buy assets again. So let's go buy assets. Let's figure out a way to get subsidized capital. And this trend, right? And people should not be betting against the innovation capital of the world, right? And so it's like, okay, how many big companies are based in South Florida? I don't know. I can't name one, right? And so it's like, so if you say, okay, this is the place where every major tech company, you know, minus Amazon and Microsoft, right, were born and grew.
They're near.
And this is where OpenAI and Perplexity and Anthropology or whatever all these companies are called. It's like, you know, and that's worth 50 billion and that's worth 50 billion. Holy moly, right? Look, basically, is this getting on the back of that wave, right? And so, you know, and I think that our team has done a great job managing through a very difficult period in time. And I think, and focusing on, and I think that will be basically, as the mega trend turns back behind us, as cost of capital adjusts, as, you know, basically, and really the demographics return to kind of a long-term trajectory for the Bay Area and California, we will be very well positioned, right? And I think what people forget is that COVID was a once in 100-year event. That's right. Which totally changed the demographic patterns of California and our nation, right? That's true. And as we get a reversion to the mean, we may not get back to 2018, 2019, but as we get a reversion to the mean, we will be well positioned. And that's why I always think real estate is not a trader's business. It's not like a stock. It's a long-term hold business, right? And you have to use leverage appropriately. You have to think long-term, and you have to think about how do you create a long-term asset. And that's what we do very well here right now.
That's right. Riaz, as we wrap up here, is there anything else you would want to share with our audience before I let you tell people where to find out more about you?
Look, I think the key thing, if people are ever thinking about being entrepreneurs, is believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, know yourself, right? So there are things you're good at and there are things you're not good at, right? And so make sure you're surrounding yourself with other people that balance out your skill set, right? And number three, think long term, right? Don't overestimate what you can accomplish in a day, and don't underestimate what can be done in a decade, right? And I think that's, and then be positive, right? Right. Because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Riaz, this has been an absolute pleasure. I took 4 pages of notes, so that's pretty awesome. But I appreciate your investing a little bit of time with me. And where would people be able to find out more about you and or Riaz?
Well, if you want to rent from us, go to Arthouse.move. Mm-hmm. And if you want to check out more about kind of us as a platform, go to RiazCapital.com.
Awesome. Riaz, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the time.